What if the Bible isn't just wrong? What if it's the most influential error in human history? If it's false, billions of people have structured their lives around fiction. Governments shaped by it, laws influenced by it, moral systems built on it. If it's not credible, it hasn't just been wrong, it has been dangerously wrong. But if it is credible, then dismissing it casually isn't intellectual independence, it's intellectual negligence. Christianity rises or falls on history, not feelings. Jesus lived, Jesus was executed, Jesus rose, and if that didn't happen, this collapses. So the question isn't, do I like Christianity? The question is, did it happen? In today's video, I'm going to quickly walk you through 12 ways that the Bible is credible. Number one, we have manuscripts. When people say the Bible's been changed so many times, that usually comes from a misunderstanding. We have over 5,800 Greek New Testament manuscripts. We have thousands more in Latin and other languages. That is not a small number. In fact, that is historically overwhelming and historically significant. The earliest fragments date within decades of the originals, not centuries later, decades. Compare that to other works where the gap is often between 500 and 1,000 years. And are there textual variants? Yes. But over 99% of them are minor. It's a spelling error, word order, grammar, but no core doctrine is in doubt because of a textual variant. If the New Testament were widely corrupted, we wouldn't know where. Instead, we know exactly where the differences are. And that doesn't make Scripture fragile, it actually strengthens Scripture. Number two is the discovery of the Dead Sea Scrolls. In 1947, the Dead Sea Scrolls were discovered, and among the scrolls was a copy of Isaiah dated more than 200 years before Jesus. When scholars compared that scroll to later Hebrew manuscripts, it was over 95% identical, 2 centuries apart. That means the Old Testament wasn't mutating or changing widely over time. It was being preserved very carefully. This didn't just help Christians, it also validated Jewish textual tradition. That is stability across centuries. Number three, there have been several archaeological discoveries. This is where skeptics historically overplayed their hand. For decades, critics claimed David didn't exist, David was mythological. Then the Tel Dan stele references the house of David. Pontius Pilate, also once doubted, now is confirmed by the Pilate stone. Luke's use of political titles, once criticized, later confirmed by regional inscriptions. Archaeology doesn't prove the resurrection, but it repeatedly shows that the authors knew the political and the geographical realities of their time. That's not what legends look like. Legends, over time, they drift, but the Gospels anchor. Number four is that Scripture contains some embarrassing details. If you were inventing a religion, you wouldn't write it like this: Peter denies Jesus, the disciples run, Thomas doubts, David commits adultery, Israel constantly fails. That is not how you would write it. That's uncomfortable honesty. Historians call this the criterion of embarrassment. You don't invent details that weaken your credibility unless you are preserving what actually happened. And number five is the resurrection. Here's where this becomes extremely serious. The resurrection isn't some peripheral Christian belief, it's the core belief. And the earliest Christians' preaching, preserved in 1 Corinthians 15, dates within just a few years of the crucifixion. That means that from the beginning, Christians were saying, He died, He was buried, He rose, we saw Him. And they were saying it in Jerusalem, where the tomb was, where the enemies were, where it could be checked. If this was something that was made up, if this was something that was fabricated, Christianity dies immediately. It doesn't spread. It collapses day one. And number six, there were multiple independent sources. The Gospels are not identical copies. Some people look at that as a weakness, but they are different perspectives, different emphasis. Then you add Paul's letters, which are earlier than the Gospels. You have independent streams pointing to the same exact core events. In historical analysis, convergence strengthens credibility. It does not weaken credibility. Number seven is that there were also non-Christian sources. Tacitus references Jesus' execution under Pontius Pilate. Josephus mentions Jesus and James. Pliny the Younger describes Christians worshiping Christ as God. These weren't pastors defending doctrine. They were people outside of the faith acknowledging historical reality. The reality that Jesus existed, He was crucified, His followers believed, He rose. That's historical bedrock. For number eight, we have to zoom out. There was narrative unity. The Bible was written over about 1,500 years. Different authors, different cultures, different genres, and yet one consistent unfolding narrative. Creation, fall, redemption, restoration, themes that are introduced in the book of Genesis reappear in Revelation. That level of cohesion across centuries is extremely remarkable. Even critics acknowledge the narrative continuity of Scripture. Number nine, early dating. Paul's letters date within 20 to 30 years of Jesus' death. In ancient history, that's early. Eyewitnesses were still alive. If the resurrection was fabricated, hostile witnesses were in a great position to challenge that. But you don't publicly invent resurrection appearances in Jerusalem if the body can still be produced. Number 10, martyrdom. Now, let me be very clear. People die for false beliefs all the time, but they die believing those beliefs are true. The disciples would have known whether they fabricated the resurrection. If they invented it, they knew it was false. And yet we see a willingness to suffer and to die without hesitation, without recanting. And that doesn't automatically prove truth, but it makes deliberate fabrication psychologically implausible. Number 11 is that we see explosive growth. Christianity exploded in the first century. This was without power, without wealth, without institutional backing, and at the center of its message is a crucified Messiah. In Roman culture, crucifixion meant humiliation. In Jewish expectation, a crucified Messiah was scandalous. This was not a message designed for people to easily accept, but yet it still spread rapidly. Movements built on easily falsifiable lies collapsed, but this one didn't. Something happened. You can debate what it is, but nothing happened doesn't explain it. And number 12, enduring impact. For 2,000 years, the Bible has shaped civilizations, ethics, law, art, individual lives. It has survived empires, persecution, academic attacks. If it were fragile, it would have collapsed under scrutiny. Instead, it's still studied in the most critical academic institutions in the world. And that kind of longevity doesn't prove divine inspiration, but it demands intellectual respect. Let's be honest. You can reject Christianity, but you cannot say it collapses under scrutiny unless you've actually examined it. And here's where most resistance shows up. It's not in the manuscripts, it's not in archaeology, it's in authority. Because if the resurrection happened, then Jesus isn't just a teacher, he's Lord. And that means he defines truth, not culture, not preference, not you. That's the tension. So, here's the question you can't avoid. If the evidence points towards credibility, are you rejecting Christianity because it's untrue or because it is demanding? If this is true, what does that mean for you?